Hi, my name is Kevin and I collect old irons. In a previous video we talked about those devices that heated sat irons on the tops of wood or coal stoves. These are quite various, but have not been avidly collected by either the iron or the stove collectors, and thus they do not command high prices, but also have not been adequately preserved or described. What goes for the sat iron devices on wood and coal stoves also applies to devices associated with kerosene heaters. Kerosene is a petroleum product that is heavier and less refined than gasoline, and served as a transition between the crude oils that were popularly used in and through the 1860s into the 1870s, and the refined gasoline that became more popular in the 1890s. And in that interval, kerosene was most widely used in the kerosene lamps. And let's just take a look at one of those lamps and see how it worked. This unscrews. The kerosene would be in the reservoir here. There is a wick that would then go into that reservoir. The kerosene would come up the wick. The wick is adjustable with this knob here, and you would light this. It would burn essentially the kerosene, not the wick, and you would have a globe here which would help in the radiation of the light. The globe that we had here has been dropped and broken in the most recent take, so we'll just go without that right here. And I will give thanks to the person 40 years ago who gave me this with the recently deceased globe. This is for you, Deb. I of course collect the sat irons, and I have picked up some of the sat iron heaters. I have maybe 8 or 10 thus far. But for this video we're talking about the sat irons and we're talking about the kerosene heaters, and to do that I'm using some of the specimens from a good friend of mine, Mike Zubik.
Hi, I'm Mike, and my main passion is restoring cast iron cookware, managing to collect a few along the way, but I have a great interest in these early portable kerosene heaters and stoves.
So Mike and I have actually been talking about the stoves and heaters for a couple of years now. So our first example is this kerosene stove, which belongs to Mike. The dynamics of this are quite similar to the kerosene lamp that we saw earlier. The kerosene would be here in this reservoir. Here's the knob. There's a bit of a grill on the top, and this is the kerosene stove. This is the sat iron heater. It would fit on top of that, and this does fit well, and these might well have gone together originally. And then of course here is the sat iron that we would heat within this. Here is a patent dated July 28, 1885 by John McConnell of Cleveland, Ohio. I think this patent established the general lamp stove configuration shown here, and these stoves are available from various companies used after this patent date. And here is one of these. This is the ironclad lamp stove. This has been repainted to bring out the original colors, and take a look at this here. It, by the way, has the patent July 28, 1885 date on the back. We can pick it up this way. It has the original bail handle as well. I can click this back and open this up, and the wick would come out of here. And I also have, from a different company, the Florence sat iron heater that would go on top of this. So here is a kerosene stove with 2 wicks. Here's one with 3. The one here is made in Gardner, Massachusetts, called the Union, and the one here is made in Cleveland, Ohio. It's from the Monitor Stove Company, and it's called the Sun. And we have here, this is a marriage, not a company match, but this is the Globe sat iron heater with a patent date July 5th, 1871. It would fit on top of here, and you might have bought these separately for that. And this is really it's a pan. We showed this in a previous video momentarily, but this is actually literally called a sat iron heater, and this is from the A&W company here on top of a monitor stove, but it makes a good fit, and I bought these two together, and you would put the sat irons on top of this and heat them. The terminology applied to these devices is various and not consistently used. In general, I call these small kerosene stoves and then specify the number of wicks, but some people call these single wick stoves lamp stoves and refer to the multiple wick units as sat iron heaters. In actuality, I see what some people call a sat iron heater a kerosene stove, and then the small piece on top that would surround the sat irons themselves I call the sat iron heaters. So there's again different terminologies used. Note that this card is for the Adams and Westlake kerosene heater, again with a sat iron stove on top of that. Here is a trade card for the Florence Stove Company, and you might notice that these things were used to heat quite a number of accessories, broilers, steamers, ovens, in addition to the sat iron heaters. And here is an Adam and Westlake kerosene stove. It's quite a large unit. It's got a rectangular top. This has patent dates from 1869 to 1883. Adams and Westlake, also known as A&W, was based in Chicago. It eventually became the Adlake Company, and it made bicycles and cameras and railroad lanterns and all kinds of things. This belongs to Mike, but I happen to have the A&W sat iron heater, and these things tend to be quite noisy. This is a perfect match, and these should not be disassociated. Mike's going to take this home with him and complete this display. So let's differentiate the sat iron heaters that were heated on the wood burning, coal burning stoves, such as what would be in a kitchen. Here's an example here, and you might notice that there's a round bottom. This would fit into the hole left when you remove the lids from one of those kitchen stoves. Sat iron heater for 2 irons. Here is basically the same thing for 2 irons, but we'll notice here that this has a rectangular frame here, and this would be sitting on top of a square-topped kerosene stove. So again, these are quite similar devices, but for 2 quite different technologies. And by the way, the people that might collect the wood coal burning kitchen stoves might be a whole different category of collectors than those that would collect the small kerosene stoves. So here is a sat iron heater that we have seen previously. This is for 4 irons, and I presented this in our video on sat iron heaters for the wood coal stoves that would be used in the kitchen as a heater that was used on those stoves. And I have now figured out that I was mistaken there. This sat iron heater would, excuse me, we're now finished with breakfast. I'll move the skillet aside. We're ready to do some ironing. It would fit here. We have a couple of more items to mention, and these are essentially incomplete. You very seldom find a whole set of these things together. For me, I find a sat iron heater, and then I'm looking around to see if I can find a stove that might fit that. This is the other way around. This is the stove for which I do not have the sat iron heater. This stove, it's quite massive. It's the Perry & Company, made in Atlanta, Chicago, New York, and it has a top here, and let's see if we can see that top. That top has a larger circle and then a couple smaller circles, so it can be used for various things at the same time. But there also is, I know because it's illustrated in the Irons by Irons book, a sat iron heater that fits in this. So I found this on eBay. I know that someday I might find that sad iron heater, so I bought the stove in anticipation of that and had that for a number of years. So if there's anybody out there that has a sad iron heater for the stove, we can trade, I can buy, we can work out some kind of a deal. Oh, and by the way, I do want to point out this one has the original mica flakes here, oftentimes busted out of these things. You can actually get a piece of mica and cut them out and put some new mica pieces in here. But beautiful piece, just needs a final element. And here's a final piece, a bit of a problematic item, and that we're not sure exactly what it would have gone with. This is a heater for 5 sat irons. It is open on the bottom. In this particular one, the irons obviously would have been horizontal, and the question is exactly what does it go to? I have queried the folks at the Iron Works Facebook page, and I recommend that for those of you who have some questions with these regards. And I have recently found a patent for something very, very similar to this that would have sat onto a pyramid shaped device that would have set into a wood stove. I think that this goes with a patent that I have not yet found for a similar device that would have sat on a, I think, kerosene stove. The point here is that these things were made in large numbers once upon a time. Very few survive, and oftentimes these survive as pieces that then have to be rediscovered and re-put together, and a work in progress, if you will. So with all that said, I thank you again for watching these, and I encourage you to subscribe and send your questions and comments to me. I will include a link to the Ironworks website, and the real joy of collecting these things is that there is quite a large and an extended community, which includes my friend Mike.
Yeah, yep.
We thank you very much and look forward to seeing you again.